This is the Roots and All podcast, and I'm your host, Sarah Wilson. Join me as I talk about all aspects of gardening with some of the top horticulturists from around the world. In this episode, I'm joined by the team behind Upper Bloom, a Netherlands-based company bringing modular plant-filled containers to some of the most densely built parts of our cities. It feels like a natural companion to the recent episode on the transformation of London's Sloane Street. Where that project explored large-scale infrastructural urban greening, this conversation zooms into street level, to terraces, pavements and retail frontages, and asks what role portable planting can play in shaping greener cities. We discuss the tension between plants as aesthetic magnets and plants as ecological infrastructure, and whether systems like this genuinely contribute to urban biodiversity or primarily serve commercial and visual goals. It also raises interesting questions for designers and landscape architects. Is this kind of modular greening part of their remit, or are companies like Upper Bloom carving out a new, more agile niche, bringing greenery to challenging space-limited areas that might otherwise remain hard and grey? As ever, the conversation digs into sustainability, plant choices, maintenance, and the practical realities of keeping cities green, and what green really means in the first place.
I'm Sam. Started Upper Bloom 7 years ago. I have a background in communication sciences. Did my first start of my career. I've worked in the advertising industry. That's where I also know Steve from. And 7 years ago, my mother handed over me a filled planter for on my balcony railing for my third floor apartment in Amsterdam. And that was for me the real first inspiration for Upper Bloom. I have 3 daughters at home, 7, 4 and 1, happily married. I live in Gouda, in a very old city in the Netherlands. And I love watching rugby, playing golf, and being with friends.
My name is Tom. I have a background in the hospitality industry and then worked for Heineken 8 years. And in 2020, Sam sent me a message if I would like to have a cup of coffee. So we did. And I already thought, well, maybe something nice is coming out of this cup of coffee. And indeed it was, because Sam asked me to join him on his adventure to starting Upper Bloom to make sure the city would look nicer with the planting system. So back in 2020, I joined. I live in Amsterdam. I have 2 daughters and I love cycling, road cycling.
And my name is Steve Griffiths. So I know Sam from 5, 6, 7 years ago when we worked in advertising together. And I've worked in advertising my whole life, actually. But I've always had this passion for plants on the side. And I've always been determined to try and find a way of making a career out of it. And so for the last 5 years, I've been talking to Sam and Tom about, could I join Upper Bloom? Could I set the UK up? Is there an opportunity? And then maybe 6 months ago, we said, yeah, let's go for it. So I feel like I'm in this sort of journey of a lifetime, actually, as I've got older, that I'm now part of this journey to bring Upper Bloom to the UK. So I live in London, live in Notting Hill, which is close to our little hub that we've set up. We've got a nursery there, and I've got 3 kids and a dog and a cat.
Excellent, thank you. So what's the idea behind Upper Bloom? What do you actually do?
Yeah, well, currently what we do, as I would explain it as of today, what we do, we in the Netherlands, we are so far helping out more than 500 hospitality owners with their outdoor planter plans. Especially in the Netherlands, the outdoors for the hospitality industry is a very big market. It's a very big trend. And currently, the outdoor terrace season is usually around 6 to maybe 8 months. It starts in March and then maybe it ends in October. So it's more than half of the year that the terrace seating is very important for hospitality owners and entrepreneurs. As of 3 years ago, we made a pivot with our business model. And as of 3 years ago, it was also the time that COVID ended. Hospitality was able to open up their doors again. And we really found a big product market fit with Upper Bloom. Essentially, what we do, we sell our customers planters, but these planters come with inner containers. And these inner containers are part of a circular system, which means we can do the filling, the growing up of plants at our end. And once we go to one of our customers, we only basically place the planters on the set locations. We fill them with our inner containers with the pre-filled plants, usually plant arrangements. And in all, this way we can really transform an outdoor terrace in a manner like really quick, since everything we do has handles. So it also means that we do things a little bit differently compared with a gardener who would come up with bags of potting soil and shovels. We have from the ground up designed this modular planter system, which is able to add greenery in locations which are sometimes difficult. Secondly, very important, the upkeep is done more easily. It means for a lot of our clients, we help them with planters with perennial plants, but also with seasonal annual plants. And those are usually part of our swapping system. So when the seasons change, we come by 4 times a year to our customers and we basically swap set defined planters with new seasonal arrangements. Because in the hospitality industry, it's very important that appearance from the start is directly great. Not good, but great. And also in the low season, so our modular swapping system, when we come by, we take back the old planters in their inner container and we place the new arrangements in. And that basically makes it very easy and efficient. We are helping out almost like 500 hospitality owners. We also are now moving towards retail companies, retail centers. We always have a demand from a private market, but we so far really focus on a business-to-business proposition. And together with Steve now in the UK, as of last summer, we started the first preparations to see what we have been doing in the Netherlands. How is that replicatable in UK? And as a start, we have defined to have the London as a city as our launching city. And it's basically our first outside of the Netherlands adventure.
And do you have any sort of stats about how much footfall increases or maybe customer satisfaction increases when you've got a planted area versus one that's not got any greenery in it?
Good question. I think, Tom, maybe you have some stats from the Wereldhaven client of us. It's a big retail center.
Yeah, so it's always really hard to tell what is the impact of green because you don't have before and after data. What we have seen by one customer is that he said, could you please help me out with this piece of terrace because it's on the side of my building and it's really not that nice. So we turn it into a green space. So that means that at the end he came back and he said, well, my side terrace is now performing better than my main terrace. Let's also fix my main terrace with plants. And then afterwards he said, well, I have never had so much revenue out of my terrace. So it has an increasing impact because people would like to sit where it looks nice and cozy. And when the first people going to sit, also the second and the third and the fourth table is attracted to that space. So we see actually that from clients' comments that it will have a positive impact. And also Wereldhaven, which is quite a big player in the Netherlands, did research. It was more indoor, but on the indoor part, they put more plants in, also for the hospitality. And they saw an increase of revenue of 25%.
So the conversations that we're having here in the UK, you know, when you talk to a restaurant owner who wants to make this investment, I mean, it's not just an aesthetic investment, because if they genuinely can turn that outdoor space into an extension of their restaurant through, you know, the provision of windscreens with planters in front of them, so it genuinely becomes a place that people can sit in, you know, early spring and they can sit there for longer, then that's a good investment for a restaurant owner because it's literally increasing the, you know, the size of their space and the number of tables that they operate. So that's part of the conversation that we're having here is it's not just how do we invest in it making it look nicer, but genuinely how can we invest in helping you increase the size of your restaurant space?
Yeah, great. I mean, I was thinking as you were talking, obviously every site is going to have some sort of limitations, be it shady or it's in an exposed location. But I'm guessing if you're working in these cosmopolitan cities and, probably should imagine quite high-end clients, are you making a nod to kind of planting trends and who designs the containers?
Yeah, good question, Sarah. We of course, with every customer, we are able to customize the planting, which is best suited for this location. Secondly, we have Ilona. It's one of our head of plants, is her title here in Amsterdam. She has a floral background, but for the last 6 years has been working for Appelbloem. And she always explains it very well because she's basically made the transition from cut flowers to basically living flowering arrangements that are going to bloom for another 3 or 4 months. The thing is, and what we discovered as well, is that our proposition, how we really add value, is not by supplying the plants and flowers our customer wants. Usually there's a conversation happening as well, meaning, okay, we know that you like this, but on your location, being an hospitality business, we would advise you to go for this, right? So maybe we are able to match the colors that you're looking for, but let's pick these plants versus these plants, because we find it's very important that the quality of the arrangement starts with the quality of the pudding soil, the planter, but also the type of plants. Soft plants, hard plants. I'm not sure if that's a good English translation, but we want to make it green, but also where our value is really added is when a customer, 6, 8, 12 weeks later, what's the overall appearance? Does it still look fresh, green, healthy? And we take that quite seriously. And that also means that we sometimes would advise our clients to not go for certain plants.
And how often might a container be changed out?
Usually, if I have this like benchmark customer of us, he has maybe like 10 to 15 planters, of which usually around 8 to 12 are filled with perennial plants. Those can be solistic plants, hedges, bushes, or it could be green. We call it our evergreen arrangements. Those are mixtures of perennial plants with ferns, ivy, also some bigger plants, Fatsia. For the last couple of weeks, we've been using a lot for this year. Next to that, there's also around those 4 to 5 other planters that we fill with seasonal arrangements. And they make sure that we come by 4 times a year to these customers. Because usually, after 2 to 3 months, these arrangements have done the blooming and flowering. And it means that we're heading towards a new season. And then we basically already do all the preparation to have the new seasonal arrangements ready. Seasons are spring, summer, late summer. So basically autumn, we call it late summer, especially because in that season, there's still a lot of flowering, beautiful plants. And then we go into winter. And for the last 2 years, we also offer Christmas and more the festive season arrangements. So short answer, Sarah, is 4 times a year.
Okay. And in between times, are you going into water and maybe do things like deadheading, or is that done by the client?
No, 95% of the cases done by our customers, and they give some clear instructions for that. So far, that's working really well in the Netherlands. There is, for a few big retail organizations, we do the watering. But, it has to work in the business model. Otherwise, we're going to just charge too much, right? To be realistic. But yeah, it's done by the customers. Yeah.
Maybe it's good to add is that all our planters has like an 8-liter water reservoir and a water meter. So that means that if you only give once a week, you give a good splash of water, you will be fine. Therefore, it's really easy to maintain.
Talking about the plants themselves, are you sourcing them purely from the continent when you're doing the UK planters? I know, Steve, you mentioned a nursery in Notting Hill.
So yes, we source them locally. So we are now discussing with 3 parties who will probably going to help us. So they are grown locally, but we also to do the fulfillment at the same site as where we do the sourcing. So then you have less transportation costs, you have less waste of spots where the plants are grown in. So we always try to be in our supply chain as efficient and as good as possible.
So the location in Notting Hill will literally be the place that will deliver the arrangements. from the growers that we're talking about in the UK, and then we'll just distribute those throughout London and do the swaps throughout London. So the nursery just becomes a logistics hub more than anything.
Thinking about the sort of bigger shrubs, is that something you can also do from the UK, or are you going to be transporting those in? Because I know they take a longer time to grow, obviously.
So we will work with the local growers, and we will also purchase via those local growers. So if in a case a green shrubs is not available in the UK and it should be sourced from Spain or Italy where they grow faster, then of course we do. But we do it via our party in the UK.
Okay. And when you mentioned about the growing medium that you use, is that going to be the same in the UK? Do you use like a uniform mix across the board?
Yeah, we of course, and that's also a role for Steve here to play. We have to adjust to the local taste. London and UK might be a little bit more classic. However, we also would like to challenge that and to see if we can make a variety that is a little bit maybe not too classic and a little bit more creative and more appealing. But maybe you can add something there, Steve.
Yeah, there's a kind of group of pubs in London who have a very specific style, that kind of country type style. You know, they use baskets, they use this kind of lots of wildflowers. And as Tom says, I think the audience that we're going for, we're trying to challenge them a little bit and not just think about black containers or cordon steel containers, but actually think about how can the containers add colour, and then how can the plants add colour. And so once you start to present that kind of way of doing it to, you know, whether it's a restaurant or a retailer, actually, I think they then see the potential. So there seems to be quite sort of a blind spot almost in terms of planters need to be quite muted and you get your colour from the plants. Well, I think actually we think slightly differently. So it will be interesting to see over the next few months how that proposition comes across and whether we can convince people. I think we can. But it's just a slightly different mindset from the one that people have had.
Intriguing. I would love to see what a new kind of challenging container display looks like. I'll have to go on your website and have a look. But when a container comes to the end of its life, obviously the plants have done their job, and then you've got the compost, which I'm assuming is going to want changing out to a greater or lesser degree. What happens with those plants when they go back to the site?
Well, the good part is we are at a nursery. So in the Netherlands, we already reuse like 60 to 70% of the plants we can reuse. And some of the plants that are out, they flourish and that are not looking nice anymore. Now we are at the nursery and we're working together with a gardener. So the plants also get a second life. They will be maybe added to gardens or to... Here in Amsterdam, we have a cooperation together with the Municipal of Amsterdam, so that the plants that we don't use can be used to get back into the city. So we try to recycle as much as possible, but sometimes, of course, the plants also didn't get that much water they needed or are not really alive anymore. Of those plants, we will make compost out of it, but for most of the plants, we have a second life.
And how about the compost that you use? Is it peat-free, and can you recycle that to a degree as well?
Yes, it's peat-free. In the Netherlands, we also use biological, so there's no artificial fertilizer in it. And we have the same standards in the UK.
Are you fertilising the plants whilst they're in situ?
We use potting soil, really high-quality potting soil of an organic substance. So we don't need to fertilize because the substance itself is alive with organisms that produce enough for the flowers to bloom.
Can you dive into that a little bit more for me?
Well, we just switched to a biological compost, which is produced in the Netherlands. And when we first started, we had more compost that was made of crunch coconuts and that type of material. And that doesn't have any fertilizer in itself. And you have to put artificial fertilizer in it. But when the guys came over here, they showed their compost. It was still warm, right? From life inside the compost. There were also worms inside the compost. And nature on itself doesn't need artificial fertilizer when you have the right potting soil available.
And in terms of things that might challenge the plants, I'm sure they're bombarded by a range of different things whilst they're in place. But how about pesticide use? Are you using pesticides either in the nurseries or once the containers are in place?
No, we don't use pesticides once the container in place. At the grower's place, we are not sure exactly what they are used by growing the plants. Of course, we would love to have everything skull certified, but there's still a big case to win. But once we install the plants, if you give the right conditions to the plants, enough water and enough fertilizer, then the plants itself remain strong. So sometimes you get like little bugs, lice into the plant, but that means that the plant is on a space that he doesn't like, because then he becomes weak. And then when he becomes weak, he becomes more fragile. And then also the lice can have an opportunity there. So we always look at the place and which plants suits for the spot. And then if you just give water and a good soil, then we don't have any problems.
Excellent. Also, I tend to look at things from a perspective of how valuable plants are for biodiversity as well as for people. Are you including things like native plants or plants for pollinators in your displays? And are you doing that consciously, or is that just an aside?
First of all, it needs to look really nice. And then we also look to plants that, of course, the plants that we take are flowering at the moment they should flower, right? So in March, we put plants in the arrangements that are normally growing in March. But of course, we also sometimes have some cultivated plants because they grow a little bit longer or they're a little bit more strong. So we always look for native plants, but we have to look for the combination that it also is working for the city, but also for our end user, that it looks really nice, because native plants tend to flourish a shorter period of time, sometimes 6 weeks. And we also need some plants in that remains at least for 2 months nice for our end users.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that businesses will use this to up their green credentials. My only pushback is that perhaps that it looks nice and it looks green, but it's not providing much in terms of the kind of ecosystem services when it comes to wildlife or other kind of aspects of upping the biodiversity. So that would be my only concern, I suppose, that people are using this to bolster their greenery and also to look like they're doing a good thing for the environment, but actually it's more for people. But I don't think you missell the product as something that's really good for the ecosystem, actually, do you?
A valid point. And I think being a young company, 3 years ago, we were with like 4 people here at Upper Bloom. Today, we're with 20 people. So we are growing now. At first, our main goal is to help the hospitality owners, right? Create a terrace which is more appealing with plants. I think what we also try to do, and those are the conversations we're having with growers as well. In our first week, you don't have much of a base to have a discussion with growers, right? We would prefer and have conversations with growers saying, why don't you stop using pesticides in all for us? And he would say, oh, I'm happy to do so, but then you would need to hire my whole greenhouse facilities, because, I'm also selling to the Asian market, to the US, and I have things I have to comply with. But while we're growing now, we don't order just trays. We're getting close that we're going to ordering full truckloads with plants. And then we are a better partner with some more power on the table, and to make a business model which also works for the grower. And I think that's one of the ambitions we also have, is we do the custom work, but we also have a standardized way of making the arrangements. But in the future, and we want to have and give it an option to our end users. Would you like to go for more colorful, appealing like this? Or would you like to go for colorful, but also native and more biodiverse friendly? But then again, I think we're just on the scale of becoming more of an adult company, having more funds, and also offer from an operational side more types of arrangements. And I think that also has to do with it.
Yeah, and I think that having plants there to start with is a good thing, and maybe a gateway to people becoming more adventurous or understanding of how plants work and how they work in the bigger picture of the environment. So yes, I mean, from that perspective, if that's your kind of long-term aim, then I wish you luck with it, because I think it's a good thing.
In Amsterdam, we work with a social firm. It's called Pantar. It's a company that helps people who have a distance to the labor market or having challenges to access the labor market. Our ambition here in Amsterdam, and I think we're getting quite close to that, is that 20% of our operational work is done by people from Pantar. So with the help of a coach, they're able to do work for us. That means they will go on the lorries, help with the installments. And we have 2 great co-workers here working at our hub, helping with the maintenance and the preparation of all the plants. That's one. We're really keen on finding this in the UK as well. Secondly, what came to my mind, Tom, we have a background in hotel management, in advertising, in art. I can pick up a few people of my colleagues. We don't have a lot of people with a background in greenery, but that makes us quite unique as well in how we look at things. I think we're really outstanding in our service level, which is, if I compare it to my Dutch competitors here, who are basically gardeners, it's a different method of work. Since we work with our inner containers, swapping, we really try to be quick and vivid in servicing. And I think, the group of people is also quite different than your average gardening company. But I hope that will probably be an upside for us as well in the UK on how we do things and how we make ourselves stand out in doing greenery work.
We can make spaces green that normally aren't really easy to make green because of our system. So in the last years, we added 6,000 square meters of greenery into the city of Amsterdam, for instance, which is quite substantial. And in that sense, we are adding next coming years also a lot of greenery to the London city with all its benefits.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yes, definitely. Thank you for adding that.
Can I add one more thing? I was listening this weekend to the podcast with the Sloane Street that you had. And I was looking up some pictures as well. And I think, one of their main challenges was also, doing experiments on digging a hole downtown London, right? How does that work? Is it able to do? And also seeing what they've done. I mean, it's really beautiful. And I think where Upper Bloom lives is just in the layer under that, because this is a big project, what happened there on Sloane Street. And you can see the end result here. But I think with our proposition, we're able to give entrepreneurs on the streets, hospitality owners, retailers, maybe their own option to add in and add greenery themselves in their overall street appearance. So I just felt we were not competing with them, because what they do is really something else and magnificent. But we bring in something else which leans on, flexible, modular, adding greenery in a very dense city.
So if people were interested, what's the process? How do they contact you? Do you come and do a site appraisal? Can they get containers fairly instantly?
Yeah, I mean, we are talking to a number of restaurants. We're talking to a number of streets in London, actually. There's these things called business improvement districts. There are about 20 plus of these places in London. There's one in Fitzrovia, which looks after a street called Charlotte Street, which has a number of existing planters in that street and terraces for restaurants as well. And so the process there, as an example, is, they've already got some planters in place. We went and had a look at the planting that we could do and how our inner containers would fit within those planters that they've got there. We do that appraisal, then we come back with a proposal. Obviously, we can use things like AI now to mock that up and show people what that looks like. And then it becomes a commercial discussion. So it's a pretty simple process of, you've got an outdoor space, we've got a creative team who will come up with ideas for how we can transform that space. We'll then present that to the customer together with a commercial proposal, and then we'll agree how we move forward and whether we just go for green plants or whether we do seasonal plants and these swaps that we're talking about. So we can work with 2 types of clients, actually. People who already have existing planters in place, and we can use our internal system to put into that. The preferable way that we work is that we provide, the external planter and the internal planters also. But yeah, that's how people can work with us.
If this episode sparked your curiosity, you might also enjoy episode 363, The High Line, which explores how planting and design have reshaped a once industrial rail line into a beloved urban green space. And episode 369, Retail Meets Urban Nature, where landscape architects discuss the transformation of London's Sloane Street into a greener, more human-centred boulevard. You'll find links to both in the show notes, and as always, thank you for listening. Next up is Benny with his Insect of the Week, or Bug of the Week in this case. But first, a word from this episode's sponsor, Cerddwr's Herbs, a small Welsh Celtic herbal business creating sustainably sourced dried herbs and botanical blends designed to help you feel more grounded and connected with the plant world. If you can, do check out their website and support them.
To the healers, dreamers, and keepers of the old ways, listening to Bug of the Week. Hello from the heart of Wales. Here at Cerddwr's Herbs, we carefully craft our herbal blends and pouches. Every herb is sourced in the UK, then handcrafted into 100% natural products, wrapped in fully recyclable and biodegradable packaging. We care for the planet as it cares for us. Inspired by an ancient wisdom for the wanderers and dreamers of today, we invite you to slow down and sit with our Pacifica blend and connect with a simpler, more enchanted way of living. Begin your journey at Cerddwr's Herbs and use the code BUDPODS for a special discount at checkout.
Now here's Benny with a little help from Dylan.
Cerddwr florentina. Sounds quite exotic, doesn't it? This is a giant tube web spider, also known as a green fang tube web spider. And I'm talking about this beautiful thing under the bracket of Bug of the Week, as it's an arachnid, not an insect. Spiders fall under a different order. I'm guessing most of you knew that, but just in case not. Cerddwr florentina sounds exotic because the second part of its name, the scientific name, Florentina, denotes to the place it was first recorded, which is Florence in Italy. And it's a spider that is very well established in the UK now. It's said to have arrived around the late 19th century. It's native to the Mediterranean and North Africa, and we think it came into the UK on cargo ships and seaports. It's a wonderful thing, and we've got loads of them near where we live in Westminster, London. And yes, it's something I wanted to talk about because it's out and about at the minute. So Dylan, my 4-year-old son, and I have been out with a torch at night and looking into the little holes in the brickwork where there are these tube webs. You may have spotted those in the daytime, but this is a nocturnal species, so it's more active at night. So we go out with the torch looking for woodlice and spiders and all sorts. And this has been quite a find for us recently, as it's such a striking species. It's very, very black, but it's got these kind of green fangs, or the chelicerae is the scientific name for the iridescent green mouth parts. So it's all black with iridescent green mouth parts. And it's quite large. It's up to about 22 millimeters in size. The females are bigger than the males. The females tend to stay put inside their tube web creations. And what they do, they wait for something to knock the tripwires, some people refer to them as, so the silk tripwires. So that's a way of detecting prey, things like beetles, flies, and moths, and then it ambushes them. So I wasn't quite aware of this strategy, but Dylan and I, 8 o'clock at night before his bedtime, we had a little bit of grass and we dangled it in front of the tube web, and the whole thing came out, and it was a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. So Dylan was very excited, and then for the rest of the time he was asking me to feed it. And it was quite an encounter. So I now know quite a lot about his strategy to ambush prey, nocturnal insects, hence moths, certain flies, certain beetles. And the female will lay eggs in the tube, and the female will guard, sometimes dying in the tube as well, and then can occasionally be cannibalized by the young, as you may have heard about in the arachnid world. The bite is not medically significant or dangerous, according to the literature. So that is the bit to finish on, really, to allay any fears or worries about this beautiful spider. So if you do want to go out at night with a torch and have a look in those little tube webs you might see in the holes in brickwork or in stone or in sunny places, you might get a close-up encounter with Cerddwr florentina. Do tag me in any encounters or pictures, and please don't forget to record on the apps any encounters.
Spider's cool, and it's so black, and it's bitey. Before we go to sleep, the spiders live in the holes. so webby and they crawl out. Then my dad feeds the spider one of the legs out. Then the legs grabbed. Then the spider came out and took me to nobody. And then we got pictures. So I hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.
You can download or listen to the podcast direct from the website rootsandall.co.uk. Please also check out my Patreon, where you can make a one-off donation or take out a monthly subscription to help support the podcast. Because if you enjoy the show, please help it continue. I also have a GoFundMe where you can make a one-off donation. Even a one-off donation of £1 helps, and I'll be really grateful for your support. So please go to Patreon or GoFundMe and search for Roots and All Podcast.